Everyone who has been to Utah says the same thing when they come back. They say they did not expect it. They say the photos did not prepare them. They say they booked a return trip before their flight home landed. And I understand exactly what they mean because Utah operates at a level of geological spectacle that the rest of the country genuinely cannot match. 5 national parks within a 200-mile radius of each other, more national park land per square mile than any other state. A salt flat so flat and so white that it is used to break land speed records. Ancient rock art painted 2,000 years ago still visible on canyon walls. Slot canyons so narrow you have to turn sideways to walk through them. A lake so salty that you physically cannot sink in it. The version of Utah that most people know from Instagram is the popular trailheads and the famous arches, and those things are real and they are extraordinary. But Utah is deeper than that. It is stranger than that, and it rewards the people who go deeper with experiences that have no equivalent anywhere else in the country. I have been through this state end to end. The Mighty Five, the Grand Staircase, the Uintas, the Canyon Country, the Salt Desert, the Colorado Plateau, and I built the list. 15 places in Utah that will completely change what you thought this state was. Let's get into it. Number 1, Zion National Park in the Narrows, Washington County. The walls of Zion Canyon rise 2,000 feet of Navajo sandstone directly above the Virgin River, and the scale of the canyon from the canyon floor, not from an overlook, not from a road, but from the trail that runs along the river at the base of those walls, is one of the most physically affecting landscape experiences in the American Southwest. Angel's Landing, the chain-assisted scramble to a narrow fin of rock above the canyon, requires a permit and a steady nerve and delivers a view that people describe as the finest in Utah. But the Narrows is the experience that converts people completely. The Narrows is the upper section of Zion Canyon where the Virgin River is the trail. You hike upstream through the river between sandstone walls that narrow to 20 feet apart and rise 1,000 feet above you. The water anywhere from ankle deep to chest deep, depending on flows in your route. The light coming down through the slot as a thin blue line of sky far above. You rent a dry suit in winter and neoprene socks in spring, and you go regardless of the temperature because the Narrows in any season is one of the finest canyon experiences available in the United States. The sound of the river echoing off the walls, the cold, the complete removal from everything above the canyon rim. This is the place that starts the list because nothing in Utah hits harder on first. Contact. Number 2. Bryce Canyon National Park, Garfield County. Bryce Canyon is not a canyon. It is a series of natural amphitheaters carved into the edge of the Paunsaugunt Plateau by frost weathering and stream erosion, and what the erosion produced is the largest concentration of hoodoos. Freestanding columns of eroded rock in irregular organic shapes on Earth. Thousands of them, red and orange and white, packed into the amphitheaters in densities that from the rim overlooks look like a frozen crowd of figures. At sunrise, when the first light hits the east faces of the hoodoos, while the west faces are still in deep shadow, the color contrast and the scale and the silence produce one of the finest dawn experiences in Utah. Sunrise Point and Bryce Point are the 2 finest overlooks for this light, and both require arriving before first light to be in position. The Navajo Loop and Queen's Garden trails descend into the hoodoos from the rim and change the experience entirely. You are walking between them rather than looking down at them, and the walls of orange rock on both sides and the narrow passages between the formations are the version of Bryce Canyon that most visitors see from the rim and never reach. Bryce also sits at 8,000 feet, which means the dark sky here is extraordinary. The park is a certified international dark sky park, and the stargazing from the rim on a moonless night is among the finest available in Utah. Number 3, Arches National Park, Grand County. More natural stone arches per square mile than anywhere else on Earth. That sentence is geologically accurate and physically incomprehensible until you are standing under delicate arch, a 65-foot freestanding arch of Entrada sandstone balanced on a slick rock bowl above the Colorado River Valley, with the La Salle Mountains snow-capped in the distance. And you understand that this formation has been standing since before the United States existed and will likely be standing after it. The hike to Delicate Arch is 3 miles round trip and gains 480 feet on sandstone slick rock, with no shade, which means the morning window before 10 a.m. in summer is the only comfortable time. The arch at sunset, when the Entrada sandstone goes from orange to deep red to almost glowing rust, is the image that has defined southern Utah in the imagination of the world. Landscape Arch in the Devil's Garden, the longest natural arch in the world at 290 feet span, now so thin in its center section that rock falls have removed large pieces in recent decades, is extraordinary in its fragility and its improbability. And Fiery Furnace, a labyrinth of narrow fin canyons accessible only on a guided ranger tour, gives you arches from the inside, the stone closing over you in passages barely wide enough to pass through, in a way that the open overlooks never provide. Number 4, Canyonlands National Park, San Juan County. The largest and least visited of Utah's 5 national parks is also the most wild. Canyonlands is divided into 3 districts by the Colorado and Green Rivers, which converge at the center of the park in a confluence visible from the overlook at the Island in the Sky Mesa. The Island in the Sky District, a 6,000-foot mesa above the river canyons, gives you the most dramatic overlook views in Utah. Mesa Arch, a small span at the rim of the mesa, frames the white rim and the canyon country 0 feet below in a composition at sunrise that is one of the most photographed in the Southwest. The White Rim Road, a 100-mile unpaved 4WD route around the perimeter of the Island in the Sky Mesa, is one of the finest mountain bike or 4WD. Trips in Utah, taking 3 to 4 days through canyon country so remote that the only sounds are wind and ravens. The Needles District in the southeast of the park is a completely different landscape. Red and white banded sandstone spires erupting from the canyon floor in clusters that give the district its name, and the backpacking routes into the Needles backcountry are among the finest desert wilderness trips in the country. If you are watching this and you have not subscribed yet, hit subscribe right now, smash that like button, and leave a comment below telling me which of these first 4 parks you have been to and which one is still on your list. Every comment helps this channel reach more people. Hit that bell. Let's keep going. Number 5, Capitol Reef National Park, Wayne County. The 5th of Utah's Mighty 5 is the least visited and in certain seasons, the most rewarding. Capitol Reef is a 100-mile long monocline, a fold in the Earth's crust called the Water Pocket Fold, that the Fremont River cuts through in a canyon of Navajo sandstone domes and cliffs. The historic Fruita District at the center of the park is a green oasis in the red desert, a grove of fruit. Trees planted by Mormon settlers in the 1880s that the park maintains and opens to visitors for free picking during harvest season in late summer. And fall. You pick cherries, peaches, apricots, and apples from orchards surrounded by 500-foot sandstone walls, and it is one of the most improbable and most pleasant experiences available in any national park in Utah. The Cathedral Valley in the north of the park, accessible by dirt road and river ford, has 2 of the finest freestanding sandstone monoliths in Utah, the Temples of the Sun and Moon, rising 400 feet from the flat valley floor in a landscape so remote and so extraordinary that most visitors to Capitol Reef never reach it. Number 6, the Bonneville Salt Flats, Tooele County. West of Salt Lake City, the remnant of ancient Lake Bonneville has left behind 0 acres of salt so flat that the curvature of the earth is visible from the surface. The Bonneville Salt Flats are where the land speed record has been broken 14 times, where cars have exceeded 600 miles per hour, where the horizon in every direction is an absolutely clean line, and the ground under your feet is white and solid and cracks in hexagonal patterns, like a giant tile floor. In late fall, when the seasonal flooding recedes and leaves a thin layer of water over the salt, the reflection of the sky in that thin layer produces one of the finest mirror images in nature. You stand on a surface that reflects the clouds and the mountains and the sky so perfectly that up and down are indistinguishable in the photograph. Wendover on the Nevada border is the nearest town, and the Bonneville Speedway on the Flats is where Speed Week happens every August. When the fastest vehicles in the world line up on the measured mile, and people who have been building racing in cars in their garages for years get to find out how fast they actually built. This is a landscape that does nothing except be itself completely, and what it is extraordinary. Number 7, Goblin Valley State Park, Emery County. Thousands of sandstone mushroom formations called goblins eroded from the Curtis Formation in a valley that looks like the set of a low-budget science fiction film from the 1950s and is, in reality, one of the most genuinely strange landscapes in Utah. The goblins range from the size of a dog to the size of a truck, and because the park allows visitors to walk freely among them, no trail required, no stay-on-path rule, the experience is one of the most tactile in Utah. Children and adults alike climb on the formations, hide between them, navigate the valley floor in any direction. The light on the goblins at sunset, when the Entrada sandstone goes orange-red and the formations cast long shadows across each other, is the finest version of this place. Goblin Valley is between Canyonlands and Capitol Reef, and it belongs on the itinerary of anyone driving that corridor. It is the place that everyone who discovers it immediately wants to bring someone else to. Number 8, Dead Horse Point State Park, Grand County. The finest overlook in Utah that is not technically inside a national park is a mesas above the Colorado River that is 2,000 feet above the canyon floor and gives you a view of the entrenched meanders of the river. The loops and curves the river carved as the Colorado plateau slowly rose around it. That is one of the most photographed canyon views in the Southwest. The point is named for a legend about wild horses that were corralled on the mesa by cowboys who used the narrow neck of land as a natural corral and then abandoned animals that subsequently died of thirst, with the river 2,000 feet below visible and unreachable. The view at sunrise, when the river catches the first light before the canyon walls and the meanders glow gold below you, is the definitive Dead Horse Point experience, and it requires arriving in the dark to be positioned before the light comes. The park is 5 miles from the island in the sky entrance of Canyonlands, and the two together in a single morning is the finest combination of overlook views available in Grand County. Number 9, the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, Garfield County. The largest national monument in the United States is a high desert wilderness of canyon country, petrified wood, ancient marine fossils, and slot canyons that almost nobody has fully explored. The Escalante River Canyon system is the centerpiece, a network of tributary canyons, draining into the Escalante River that includes Coyote Gulch, Neon Canyon, Death Hollow, and the Slot Canyon corridor below Harris Wash. Each one extraordinary in its own right and accessible by multi-day backpacking trips that require route finding, creek wading, and the self-sufficiency that the monument's remoteness demands. Neon Canyon has a pool of turquoise water at the base of a pothole slot, lit by a natural skylight above, the Golden Cathedral. That is one of the finest single moments available in canyon country and requires a 15-mile round trip to reach. The dinosaur track sites in the Cretaceous mudstone of the Southern Monument contain some of the most diverse Cretaceous trackways in the American Southwest. This monument is 1.87 million acres of mostly roadless wilderness, and you could spend a month in it and not repeat a day of experience. Number 10, Antelope Island State Park, Davis County. In the middle of the Great Salt Lake, the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, a 15-mile long island connected to the mainland by a causeway is home to the largest free-roaming bison herd in Utah, numbering around 600 animals. Antelope Island has bighorn sheep, mule deer, coyotes, and pronghorn antelope alongside the bison, and the combination of the Salt Lake, the Wasatch Front, rising above the east shore, and the wildlife gives the island a landscape quality that is unlike anything else in northern Utah. The lake itself is 2 to 5 times saltier than the ocean, depending on water level, and floating in it, you cannot sink. The density of the water prevents it. Is one of the most physically unusual experiences available in Utah. The brine shrimp and brine flies that live in the hypersaline water support. 2 million migratory birds that use the lake as a stopover each fall, and the concentrations of phalaropes, avocets, stilts, and willets on the lake shores during migration are extraordinary. You are 10 places deep and you are still watching. Subscribe right now, hit that like button, and drop a comment below telling me which of these 10 places surprised you most. Hit that bell because the last 5 on this list are the Utah that most travel content never reaches. Let's finish this. Number 11. The San Rafael Swell, Emery County, a massive geological upwarp in central Utah, 75 miles long, 40 miles wide. The rock layers tilted up in an oval dome by geological forces 60 million years ago that has been eroded into a landscape of canyons, mesas, and slot canyons that rivals the national parks in visual quality and sees a fraction of their traffic because it has no national park designation. The Wedge Overlook gives you a view of the Little Grand Canyon, the San Rafael River Canyon, that is genuinely comparable to its namesake in drama, if not in scale. The Little Wild Horse and Bell Canyon Loop is a slot canyon hike entirely comparable to the slot canyons of Zion, accessible without a permit and without the crowds. The Goblin Valley Access Road passes through the swell on the way south. The Cathedral section, a ridge of eroded sandstone fins called the Sid's Mountain Herd Management Area, is accessible by dirt road and gives you the scale of the swell's geology from within it, rather than from the overlook above. Number 12. Bear Lake, Rich County. The Caribbean of the Rockies, a designation that sounds like tourist marketing and is actually accurate. Bear Lake on the Utah-Idaho border is a glacially carved lake at 6,000 feet that has been isolated from other water systems long enough to develop its own endemic fish species, the Bonneville cisco, the Bear Lake whitefish, the Bear Lake sculpin, found nowhere else on Earth. The water is a shade of turquoise produced by suspended calcium carbonate particles that reflects the sky in a Caribbean blue tone that is completely unexpected at high altitude in northern Utah. The beaches on the west shore have sand the color of the lake water. The 6-0 run in January, when the endemic fish spawn near shore and people gather them with nets from the ice, is one of the most unusual seasonal wildlife events in Utah. Bear Lake in summer, the water temperature reaching the low 70s by August. The mountains above it, the blue water, is one of the finest lake experiences in the American West that most people south of Salt Lake City have never heard of. Number 13. Moab and the Colorado River Corridor, Grand County. Moab is the outdoor recreation capital of Utah, and it earns the title every day. The Slick Rock mountain biking on the Slick Rock Bike Trail, the most famous mountain bike trail in the world, a loop of Entrada sandstone fins above the canyon country, introduced the concept of modern mountain biking to the world in the 1970s and is still the finest single-track experience in the region. The Colorado River Corridor below Moab, the stretch from the Fisher Towers downstream to the Potash Road, is the finest road-accessible river scenery in Utah, with the Fisher Towers rising 900 feet of dark red mudstone above the river in formations that look like melted candles the size of skyscrapers. The scenic Byway 128 along the river is one of the great short drives in Utah, 44 miles of pavement along the Colorado between castle walls of Wingate sandstone. And the Castle Valley's turnoff gives you a view of the Fisher Towers, Castleton Tower, and the La Salle Mountains in a single frame that is one of the most comprehensive canyon country compositions available from a road. the dark sky above Moab, designated an International Dark Sky Park, produces Milky Way views over the canyon country that photographers travel from across the world to capture. Number 14. Timpanogos Cave National Monument in the Uinta Mountains, Utah County. The Uinta Mountains are the only major mountain range in the contiguous United States that runs east-west rather than north-south, and they contain the highest peak in Utah, Kings Peak at 13,528 feet, in a range that is almost entirely above 10,000 feet for 90 miles. The high Uintas Wilderness is one of the finest alpine backpacking environments in the West. Hundreds of lakes, remote peaks, and the headwaters of 5 major river systems, and it is accessed by a network of trailheads along Highway 150, the Mirror Lake Scenic Byway, which is one of the finest high mountain drives in Utah. Timpanogos Cave on the flank of Mount Timpanogos above American Fork Canyon is a 3-cave system connected by tunnels that contains one of the finest concentrations of helictite formations in the world. Helictites being the crystalline formations that grow in defiance of gravity, curling and branching in directions that no physical explanation fully accounts for. The trail to the cave entrance gains 1,000 feet in 1.5 miles, and the cave temperature inside is 45 degrees regardless of the season, which is the specific reward for the climb. Number 15. The Corona Arch Trail and Darkness Canyon, Grand County. You end this list not at a famous overlook or a national park entrance, but on a slick rock trail 3 miles from Moab that takes you to an arch large, 140 feet wide, 105 feet tall, that people have jumped it on a rope swing, base jumped from it, and filmed it from the air in a dozen productions. And the hike to reach it is 3 miles round trip on a trail that crosses a railroad track, traverses a sandstone ridge on bolted handrails, and delivers you to the base of the arch looking up through the opening at the sky. Corona Arch is the arch that Moab locals go to when they want the experience without the crowds, and the walk back from the arch on the Slick Rock Ridge above the Colorado River gives you a view of the canyon country and the river that is one of the finest unstructured moments Utah offers. No designated viewpoint, no interpretive sign, just you on a sandstone ridge above a canyon that has been here for millions of years, with the light moving across it in the specific way it only moves in canyon country in late afternoon, turning everything the color of the Earth's interior. That is Utah. That is what this state does when you show up for it on its own terms. And now you know exactly where to go. Here is your assignment: 3 places from this list. Write them in the comments right now. Not the whole list. 3, the ones you are actually going to do first. That public commitment is the difference between a list you watched and a trip you actually take. And when you have done your 3, come back and tell me which one surprised you most. I want to know if the Narrows was as cold and as extraordinary as I said it was. I want to know if you got to the Golden Cathedral in Escalante. I want to know if the bison were on the road at Antelope Island. These are the stories worth having. Subscribe right now, smash that like button, drop your 3 picks in the comments, and hit that bell. I will see you in the next video.